Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry. I'll share again.
Yes. Yes.
There we go. Okay. We see that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Great. Just one, I'm putting a note in here. About Slido as well, okay? Because what we're going to do today is we're going to have we're going to go through a quick run through on third-party risk and third-party management with respect to security services for municipalities. Who am I? Who the heck am I? I'm Randy Purse. I'm a senior advisor for cybersecurity training and education at the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at Toronto Metropolitan University. We have a portfolio of offerings and programming that we provide to municipalities, some through directly through the government of Ontario, others on the side as we find this to be a critical space to work with. My colleague Dan Matheson is former mayor of Stratford. He's joined us and he helps us with these training programs and help provide presentations and tabletop exercises and such at various municipal events. So that's who I am, and part of who we are. So again, please join me at slido.com at that area. At that note, you just go and put that event number at the top, and you should be able to do that. I have a few polls in this session just to help keep it interactive and keep things moving along. So I guess the first thing out of the block is particularly the audience. We have a diverse group of people here from different aspects, and different aspects of municipal operations, and from elected officials down into other leadership and other clerks, et cetera, in the northern northwestern area, and I think that it's important to understand first where we're coming from and why this is a problem. First question out of the gate is, how is your municipality supported by digital technologies? Right. So this should be a word cloud. So just put in a couple of things that you think are critical with respect to digital technologies, like what kind of things you might need to lean on. What could you do without? What couldn't you do without with respect to what kind of activities happen in the digital world? Organization, taxation software, emailing. Yeah. There we go. We're getting responses. So yeah. Connection. Yeah. Organizations. Yeah. 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 GIS, Global Information System. Yeah. So yeah, there's some if you can't get in, please try again. We'll have another opportunity, but this kind of highlights this, and this is probably common across municipalities. There's others, of course, is election coordination and communications, communications campaigns, citizen information, newsletters, these types of things, as well as operations. Municipal operations are important as well. That regardless of what you do, taking payments, yeah, absolutely. Tax, right? So these are all critical systems that we need to be concerned with, and so when we look at the dependencies that municipalities have on technologies, it's important to understand that all of these technologies are running across an internet backbone or close to an internet backbone and are connected to it, and so that makes them cyber potentially vulnerable to cyber attacks or cyber events, we'll call them. Okay, so there's a wide range of things that you end up doing in the municipality that you need to have the internet for nowadays. There needs to be some sort of digital capacity within the organizations. When we talk about cyber events now, before we get too deep, I just want to cover quickly that this includes natural hazards. So if if you have an electrical storm that takes out your local cell tower, or if you have a server that gets affected by a flood or something like that, that also matters. This is a cyber event that we need to consider. Same thing with accidental occurrences, people deleting databases, poor design, kicking out a plug on an uninterruptible power source. Those types of things are also can result in cyber activities or cyber events or incidents that we need to respond to. And then finally, of course, there's the deliberate threats that we're always concerned about, those people who are malicious in nature and trying to do us harm, whether they be outside of our organization or inside of our organization. Okay, so just in context, that matters. And the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity has identified within the Canadian national space that these are the top concerns: ransomware, critical infrastructure, state or state-sanctioned activities, online trust, disruptive technologies. And vulnerability exploitation is the number one vector. So that means that any kind of systems you have in place where there's a vulnerability, that's how they're getting in, right? So you can see the sense that there's a requirement to support cybersecurity somehow within your municipal space, and understand that these threats can have an impact on people, finances, operations, infrastructure, data, and reputation, right? So really all of these create risks within the organization, and there's also compliance and legal ramifications across all of those areas. So there's no shortage of cybersecurity challenges within municipalities, and there's a lot of risk. So what am I talking about when I talk about risk? This is cyber risk. And many of you may think of cyber risk as a technical issue. Many of you may already be moving in the direction where, hey, I fully understand that the digital domain, the digital economy exists, and now I'm myself and my organization are immersed within this, and I understand that there's risks associated with those. So this is really important to grasp, is that cyber risk is business risk. It's not just a technical problem, right? So anything that's connected to your IT, your OT, it's operational technology, which is normally associated to non-IT processes that are supported through computer-based activities, and IoT, which are surveillance cameras, sensing devices, monitoring devices, etc. So all of anything that's connected to the internet is susceptible, right? And the biggest thing is about the initial loss or harm and the potential extended impact. So there may be an initial loss or harm associated to the IT system, right? We have a server outage, or we have a ransomware attack against a server, or we have a vulnerability exploited in our communications software. But it's the extended impacts that are the business impacts that matter. And many of you already know about them. I mean, there are no shortage of examples within the municipal space, the most recent of which, of course, being Hamilton. So when we talk about cybersecurity, we're talking about primarily two things: cybersecurity and organizational resilience. That's comprised of not only the technology, but people, processes, and the technology. And then cybersecurity in a broad dimension is the protection of digital information and the infrastructure on which it resides, which really matters to you in order to define what we're talking about with respect to cybersecurity. And so that means every system, every endpoint or computer or workstation, every printer that's connected to your network, and also those things that you're responsible for within the municipal operations, including water treatment, etc., that you may have. There may be potential vulnerabilities associated with that. So we need to find ways to protect them. Okay, so that's the basic run line as to why, right? Now, leveraging third-party services is an important aspect of what happens in municipal operations, right? So this is a definition of third party. And in our context today, we're going to talk specifically about security services, but it may extend into IT or operational technology services, critical infrastructure, legal services, and any specialist services that support your security. So normally the third party the definition of third party is fairly general, but normally supported by a binding agreement and payment for those services. But they're not working for you. They're working for you, but they're independent. They're not within your organization. So just broadly defining third party in that context is helpful, because it's the biggest issue is around the agreements and the sustainment of that agreement. From a leadership perspective, if there are risks to people, data, systems of importance, critical infrastructure, your budget, okay, which happens across the cybersecurity domain, the mathematics around it are, if those risks are greater than your capability to address them, which means your resources, your expertise, tools, and your 24/7 capability or capacity, then it equals a problem, right? And this is where third-party services come in, and across municipalities, there are resource problems, there are talent problems, there are infrastructure problems, there are budget problems, right? And we all know that, and we understand that, and so the third parties are there for us to be able to lean on, and we do that. And most organizations, most municipalities rely on some level of third-party support for their cybersecurity, even if it's just simply cybersecurity software for their endpoints or their computers or workstations. So that's when we bring third-party services in, when we don't have enough resources, expertise, or capacity to address the risks that we're facing. So the benefits to leveraging third-party services, I don't need to tell you. You folks probably already know this, but just to review, that third-party services are increasingly becoming important to municipal cybersecurity ecosystem, right? You just can't do an effective job without them. And whether they come from other organizations or whether they're part of a collaborative agreement amongst municipalities in your region, or whether there's opportunities to do this on a one-to-one basis within your municipality, like you engage a specific third party for cyber legal services as an example, or cyber endpoint detection and response. The issue is that they're bringing expertise and tools, capacity and potential scalability, reliability. They're typically compliant because they're addressing, they need to meet certain industry standards. They provide cybersecurity focus in areas where you need it, and allows you to focus on the other business aspects and the other security aspects that you need to manage. And they also tend to provide pretty good value for the money, right? It depends on what you're paying and depends on how much you engage. But the reality is, with the churn that happens within municipalities, with all the things we talked about with respect to talent, lack of resources, lack of IT infrastructure, lack of IT tools, et cetera, they provide pretty good value given the fact that they're protecting you from an enormous amount of threats that can overwhelm you and take you out and cost you way more than the services that are provided by the services cost you. So just to get a sense, to what degree are you leveraging third-party security services within your organization? We'll give it just a minute or so. We don't have a lot of time, so we'll give it a minute or so. In Slido again. Okay, we're starting to see some diversity here. Okay, give it another 30 seconds or so. Someone's extensively good. So yeah, it depends, right? There's no one solution here. Every organization is different. Every municipality has different cybersecurity requirements. You have different IT and cyber expertise available. You have different risks, so you have different needs. So that makes sense that there may be diversity in how people are leveraging these services, right? So when we talk about cybersecurity, we need to figure out, okay, we need to balance the benefits and the risks when we're dealing with third parties, right? So just as an overview, there are obviously the risks that organizations have, like municipal risks. The general organizational risks that you're going to have is, one, I know there's a risk because I'm giving up some control of my cybersecurity. I may have compliance requirements that the third party may not attend to. I certainly have data and privacy requirements, management requirements that I need to respond to. I need to be careful of my dependency on their security, because what happens if they go away? I also need to be careful about vendor lock-in. Is the vendor providing something that's unique that I'll never be able to get out from underneath, right? Uh, what's the cost? Are the services portable to other vendors, right? And what are the HR costs for me? What am I benefiting quite a bit? Am I experiencing potential HR risk if my IT people leave as a result of the cyber of me bringing on these third parties? So there's a bunch of organizational risks with respect to using leveraging third party security providers, but the provider also has some risks that you need to appreciate, right? That we need to consider as we're looking at going into agreements with third parties. And several of the things are identified here. But some of the things that I really wanted to emphasize was their own security, their ability to ferret out insider threats within their own organizations, their ability to team up and collaborate on communications with you, their stability as a third party, right? Those matter, and so those are important risks that we need to consider when we're looking at any kind of third party agreement. When we look at the consideration of leveraging third party security services, and we're looking at agreements and contracts, this is a list, and I'll make sure that the deck gets sent to you. But this is a list you could take a look at and say, okay, in when I'm looking at my agreement, what kind of security clauses do I have in the big agreement, and then what kind of quality is the product or service requirements are there? And I just want to touch on a few of these things. The first one, certifications, attestations, and compliance. Does the third party have any certifications or attestations that says they can do what they are supposed to be able to do? What kind of references are there for their experience and expertise? What kind of information and system security do they themselves hold? And what kind of employee screening do they do? There's increasing evidence of insider threats into IT, managed security providers, and large IT and tech firms, simply because that's the easiest way in for some threat actors, particularly nation states. In the product or service requirements area, we're looking at amount of there are a lot of things, but amount of residual risk. So when you're looking at providing something to a third party, you're transferring some technical risk, but you still own the data risk. You still own a lot of the cyber risk. What is the amount of residual risk you have, and how are you managing that residual risk? Are they reliable? Are the products and services they're providing reliable, right? You need to be able to depend on them 24/7, and so reliability is important. Incident response. Is there an appropriate incident response process that they have where they're going to inform you timely about anything that's happening within your organization? Audits and reporting. What kind of auditability do you have? What kind of visibility do you have into their processes that pertain to your systems, your data, your security? And then finally, data residency, portability, and destruction. So that means, where is their data located? If you're holding Canadian data, we're still very much in the space where we want the Canadian citizen data, personal private information located in Canada. Is the data portable, right? If they're holding your data, are you able to pull that data back and store it and sustain it? And if they're not going to transfer the data, what kind of destruction do they have in place? But these are just some considerations, right? You need to look at these in the holistic way and think about the services that you're getting and what the agreement or the contract means and says in there. So when you're leveraging a third-party security service as part of your security strategy, there's a number of things you should have in place. And I know most organizations don't. So we just know that. A system map with vulnerabilities, an asset inventory that identifies not only your systems and your software, but your data, right? What's the criticality of the data within the organization and how is that prioritized? What do you have a threat and risk assessment? It's more than likely you don't, but it's something you should maybe ask your technical folks for, so that you can have a sense of where the threats and risks are in the IT infrastructure that you have or the OT infrastructure you have, so that you're having an informed discussion with a third party. And of course, you had some sort of security organization and governance and policy. And so the whole point is when you're engaging with a third party, you can make informed decisions around what you're trying to achieve with your third party arrangement, what kind of security services you're getting based upon where you want to put your security investment, right? So when we're looking at the risk, we need to make sure that we're sort of assuming you have all those things we just finished talking about. When you're looking at the risks, there's potential risks. The third party we just talked about, they may have disruption of services, they may be non-compliant, they may lose or breach, their services may be lost or breached. So how are those things mitigated on your end, right? If there's disruption of the third party services, if the third party is attacked, and it's happened, what are your backups? What are your contingencies for ensuring your own organizational security, just as an example? And finally, vendor management best practices. There's a number of vendor management best practices that I wanted to sort of expose you to. We don't, you can read them. At the end of the day, we're really trying to make sure that when we're dealing with third parties, they are delivering to the quality that's within the agreement. They are living up to their end of the agreement. We know that the agreement has been well informed by our understanding of the threats and the risks to our organization and what we need as security investments. But we also understand that things can go wrong. So, when we look at communications around incidents and events, have we got a strategy? Are we able to obtain legal review on any changes? If there's a dispute, is there a dispute management process in place? What happens at end of life or termination of the agreement, right? And always have some sort of contingency plan should something happen to the third party. There have been early termination of third party arrangements, and then all of a sudden, all security is gone on the organization, and there's been no you're exposed to the world at that point. So what would happen if there was a sudden termination or the organization got attacked? What would happen? So having a contingency plan in place. So with that understanding, and I know it's very quick and there was a lot of information, but hopefully you pulled out a few points. But how well do you think you're managing third-party risks with third-party services if you employ them? If you don't employ them, then it's not a concern, and this is good for information. So how well are you managing third-party risks, do you think? For security services, I should be specific. Give it another 30 seconds here. Okay. Only have one respondent. That's okay. And that's a couple. No. Okay. The mean is probably, yeah, we're doing okay. We know we need to do better. And I think that's a common situation across municipalities, right? So the key takeaways: leverage third-party security services to help mitigate cyber threats. It makes a cyber risk. It makes a tremendous amount of sense. Ensure that you weigh the benefits with the risks of using a third party, and mitigate any unacceptable third-party risks throughout the agreement, and apply vendor management best practices, and work with your technical team, whoever that means, your technical leader within your organization. If you have one, you may be solely reliant on a third party, and it can be as collaborative you need to be in that within the terms of the agreement, but work with them to try to figure out how we're going to better manage this and get better monitor our third party agreement, and how our third party is doing the job for us to secure our organizations. So that's it. I'm looking forward to any questions you might have. And it's very quick. Sorry about that, Nikita, that you kept on losing the poll site. Any questions? I know there's a lot of material happening very fast. Bottom line is third. Oh, good. There we go. Third-party services are a fact of life for municipalities, and they're going to continue to be so. They're going to grow in importance across the Canadian landscape, without a doubt. Most organizations in Canada cannot afford a cyber team, let alone, cannot afford an IT expert on their team, let alone a cyber team. And so more and more Canadians and Canadian businesses, and in particular municipalities, are going to be leaning on third-party services. So as you look forward to using third-party services, and you're within a collective here within NOMA, is how can we better leverage those third-party services? You know, what kind of sharing can we do? What kind of collaborative agreements can we enter into? How I know there are third parties that are very interested in helping and facing into the municipal space, and some of them are relatively reasonable in their costs. So when you're looking at them as an option, consider the risks that we've talked about, and consider how you're going to sort of make sure that agreement and those activities are supported throughout the life cycle of the agreement. And I think that's a big thing. Are there any other questions? I pretty much consumed all my time. Happy to answer any questions you have. And by all means, if you need to reach me, feel free to reach out to the Catalyst corporate website there, or my email. Yourself, Andrea and Katia both have my email. It's randy.purse@torontomu.ca. Feel free to reach out to me offline at any time. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. I know it's fast and furious, but I think we got a few points in there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Randy. That was great.
Thank you very much.
Appreciated. Yeah. And you just close down your presentation. Yep. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everyone. And thank you very much for your participation.
You as well. Thanks. We'll talk to you later, Randy.
Bye.
And we'll be in touch so we can share those slides with everybody.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much. Bye now.
So I'm thinking we're going to be doing a little quick change to the agenda, as Chantelle's hasn't joined us yet. So I'm going to bump up our strategic plan intern today. Katia is going to give you an overview of what she's done over the past year in her internship. So very excited. I can't believe it's almost been a year and it's almost done, but you've done a great job. So I wanted you to be able to showcase all of the work that you've done over the last year for everyone. So I will give you the floor.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to first share my presentation just because I can start with that. But yeah, I will be giving a quick little, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Is it from the beginning? Is it like showing all screen?
Now do full from the beginning. It's not full screen yet.
Okay. Is it now? Okay. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I know many of you, I've heard of some of you too, and I've talked to some of you throughout my internship. So for those who don't know, my name is Katia Borjas. I'm the strategic plan intern at NOMA, and today I'm just really excited because I'm going to be able to share.
Are you going somewhere? Where are you going? Home.
Melinda, if you could just mute yourself. Thank you.
Sorry. So sorry. Again, I'm really excited because I will get to share what I kind of did through this internship. And I will go over those projects and also the responsibilities that I had throughout the year. I wanted to start off with, can you guys see another screen or?
Hi, everyone.
I'm trying to.
Andrea, Chantelle just signed in.
Hi. Sorry about that. I was trapped on a call. I can
Okay.
wait and go after you if that's easier. It's no problem. You're muted.
Yeah, Andrew's muted.
Right. She'll be done in about 20 minutes. Does that work?
Sure. I'll
Okay.
just wait. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry
Thank you.
about that, guys.
No worries.
So I'll be giving myself a little introduction. So I'm originally from Honduras, Central America. I've been here in Canada for about 4 years, getting closer to 5 years now. I studied at Lakehead University and I got my international business honors bachelor degree. And I started my internship just right after I graduated in May of last year. So I started in June. So that's why I'm just like, it's almost been a year. So it's crazy. Time really goes by super quick. And some of the roles and responsibilities that I had as strategic plan intern were the NOMA strategic goals. So first I started as working on a primer in about Northwestern Ontario for our website. I also worked on initiating a discussion about an economic development plan, tracked fiscal condition of municipal government and annual financial information return work, asset management information, infrastructure mitigation and resilience, climate change, modernization project inventories, and investigating that multi-municipal interest in joint facility design and construction. So those are my responsibilities, and I guess like the numbers aren't correlated to, you might be like, that's crazy, like 2, 4, 5, whatever. But those are correlating to our tracker in our website where you can see all these strategic goals. So these are just the numbers of the goals in that tracker. So yeah. And now I'm gonna start with kind of like talking about like the tasks that I've completed and everything that I worked on. So again, I said the strategic the strategic goals, but these are the tasks that I've completed so far. So first I worked on a primer on Northwestern Ontario. So the primer talks about Northwestern Ontario as a region and has details like what it's like visiting, studying, and just getting to know the landscape of the region. It also had outside perspective of someone who's not from the region, right? So I'm not in Canada, nor Northwestern Ontario, but I got to bring that kind of like different and just outside perspective. And I also worked with feedback from municipalities to kind of enhance that primer and just make it more sustainable from an outside perspective, but also from knowledge from municipalities in the region. Then I worked on the economic development plan, and the economic development plan I can say was one of the biggest, but also one of the most challenging tasks that I had to do for this whole internship. I did not study economic development, nor am an economic developer at all. So this was a big challenge. Nonetheless, it taught me a lot. It taught me a various things. So from all the challenges that the region is faced, but looking also at this project from a different perspective, that the region is vast, right? And every municipality has its unique challenges. And you learn that. But as a whole, the region has a lot of challenges, where that is housing, lack of workforce, also in services, and so much more. That is why this plan was created to begin with, to kind of outline those key areas of focus that the region needs to look at as to bring more people and more businesses in, right? So the plan basically is we came up with 15 goals, and under each there's under each area of focus, there's 3 goals. And this plan is something that will be worked on even after I finish my internship. It is something that does not lose relevancy, right? So the issues of the region keep on growing and are still ongoing. So obviously that's why this plan will not lose relevancy too, because all the issues are prevalent in the region will still be. And to gain more knowledge too, to be able to create this economic development plan, I attended this SNOED 101. So it was a 12-week economic development course given by NPI. And this kind of gave me a little bit of the basics of what Northern economic development was. And it also showcased the differences of Northwestern Ontario and other regions in Ontario. But it also gave me that practical knowledge of what economic development looks like. Then I worked on some asset management and FIR data. So I looked at this both pretty separately, but also together. And the importance of looking at them together in a municipal perspective is that the data provided gives municipalities the ability to make informed decisions about their infrastructure, the investment, and also the maintenance. So when analyzing this data for the region, we concluded that there is a clear picture of infrastructure deficit. So there's a wide infrastructure deficit in Northwestern Ontario. And that is primarily given by aging infrastructure. But it's also given by the deficit of past municipal planning choices and decisions regarding infrastructure made over time. Then I worked on a climate resilience strategy page. So this came about from the strategic goal number 6, that talks about the information sharing on infrastructure mitigation and resiliency climate change. In this, I share climate change strategies and best practices from communities, but also from other countries in the world, as well as any additional resource. So it's it's not extensive, but it has kind of the main ideas and clear picture of some climate resilience strategies. Then I worked on a modernization project inventory of the region. So this is where, sorry, I kind of lost track. So it's a project inventory. And here I kind of created an inventory showcasing all the modernization projects in the region. So where there were efficient improvements or any increased public service access in the municipalities. And the inventory was divided by district and showcases some of the municipalities that are currently working on some modernization projects, but also others that have worked on modernization projects, as well as we looked at some cost sharing, and that will be up later in our website, but our modernization project is already up there. So you guys can take a look and kind of see those inventories and kind of what we did. So yeah. And now I'll be taking you guys a little bit through our website. Just give me a second. I'm gonna do a new share. So I had a video prepared, but the video, we had some problems with it. You can't hear my voice very well. So we'll be doing it manually kind of thing. So I'll be showcasing you guys where you can find all this resources and all the information that I've kind of put my flair into throughout my internship. So first we have our primer on Northwestern Ontario. So this is just a little bit of what it looks like. And through the primer, I have also added different other websites. So I started with why visit Northwestern Ontario. That one just tells you why, 5 reasons or 6 reasons why you should visit Northwestern Ontario. Then we have some community highlights, which showcases some of the events and activities and just a little bit of a highlight on all the municipalities within the districts in Northwestern Ontario, as well as a history section about Northwestern Ontario. So I had to go into some old books and kind of look at that, but it was kind of like a foreign experience because I really got to learn about Northwestern Ontario and the history of Northwestern Ontario. Then I also added some statistics from each district. So from each one of the municipalities that NOMA represents, there's a little bit of a blurb, kind of has some statistics on it. So that is where you can kind of find out really quick instead of going to the website and just going through like the internet and kind of looking for it. If you need that information, it's readily available in our website. And then some of the other things that I went to, this is the climate resilience strategy page in the website. So like I said, it kind of has a very extensive, but not really. It's kind of just a highlight of everything that you could look at. And there's a lot of websites and links to it that you can take a look at and kind of like get more information. I kind of just did a little small thing on that. And then we have some additional resources, and these additional resources were added. So I did a HR and Code of Conduct resource for municipalities, and here's the modernization project in Northwestern Ontario. So that is already on our website, and you guys can just download it, but also look at it. And then something that I'm kind of very proud of, I was going to mention it on these slides, but I can do it right now. So we have different social media. So for me, I really like social media and doing kind of that. So Andrew gave me the opportunity to kind of take that project away and just kind of like put my own flair on it. So one of the things that I did, so NOMA already had already had Facebook and Twitter as well as YouTube, but it didn't have an Instagram. So I had the opportunity to kind of take it and create an Instagram for NOMA, and I did. So it's kind of like my baby. I always call it my baby, and Andrew calls it my baby too. So I don't know, it's not loading, but it's a page where we kind of like share everything, the learning morning and events that have been happening since I started my internship. While I've been on the internship, it's been really active, and I obviously would want it to keep being active, but it's just really nice to see it growing and grow throughout the time that I've been in this internship, and just kind of like showcases everything that we do. So I'll probably do a plug and be like, you guys should follow us in our Instagram and all our social medias because they're pretty nice. So yeah, that's kind of the website, and just give you a quick run through of what the website looks like. And again, like I said, our social media, again, our social media, you guys can follow us. I would be really happy to see some of you are new followers on that in our social media. But yeah, that's what one of the things that I did too is a small project for my internship. And then I also had the opportunity to network through all of this by going to conferences and meetings. And the conferences were just really opportunities to learn and kind of get to meet people who are actively involved in the issues of the region. And I truly got to experience them and also learn from them. But everything that I experienced through this internship was just, I feel like, very important for either my personal growth, but also both my professional and my personal growth. And it also helped me gain a lot of knowledge for the tasks that I had to complete through the internship. And the skills and knowledge that I've gained are just gonna be so helpful because as an international student, I got to experience that going into the municipal environment. If I wouldn't have gone into this internship, I wouldn't have gained that knowledge of what government, like provincial, federal, and municipal governments do, right? So yeah, that was something that I kind of really enjoyed going to kind of getting to experience that within the conferences, that networking. So yeah, thank you very much for paying attention. If you guys have any questions, I think I still have a little bit of time.
Yeah, just we have 1-2 minutes if anybody has any questions for Katia. Thanks, Katia. Nikita says great job too.
Thank you.
And we will I'll share her presentation as well. And then the video that she originally was going to do will be in that presentation. It was about a 6-minute video, but when we were trying to make that work this morning, it really just was not happening. So
Yeah.
appreciate your patience on that one. But seeing no questions, maybe Katia, you're off the hook for today.
Oh, nice. Thank you everyone for paying attention though.
Oh, well, thank you, Katia. And now, sorry about that, Chantelle. I just moved.
Oh, no, that's mine, but things, you get calls you can't turn away. And yeah, so, and Katia, thank you so much for being able to jump in early and flip the spots. And that was a great presentation. Yeah.
So
on joint facilities, I'll just quickly make a plug that the municipalities really need to start considering joint dog impound facilities because we have a crisis on our hands, but that's a topic for another day.
And so Chantelle, I just made you a co-host so that if you do have any slides, you're able to share your screen and
okay, I didn't do slides since it's only 30 minutes. So I'm just going to, this is a planning law update.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so as we know, since the provincial government changed in the spring of 2018, we've had 10 bills come through on planning law. This isn't unusual. Whenever governments change, they love to go after planning. It's mostly about Southern Ontario, but a lot of these changes pertain to the whole province. And so I just want to clarify what's going on, what's in force, what's being proposed and not enforced yet. And so we have Bill 23 that came in October 2022 that made significant changes, some of which are enforced, some are not. That was followed by Bill 97 last April, which, tidied up and added on a few provisions, not enforced yet. And then very recently on April 10th, we have Bill 185 and the new provincial policy statement proposed by the government. So none of that's enforced, but again, some modifications of Bill 23, some new things as ongoing consultation around housing, right? So this is just to give you some quick highlights of the big things that may impact your communities. And before we get started, I'll just remind you about the hierarchy of planning, right? So whenever you or your committee of adjustment, if you have one, is making a decision, it has to be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Right now, that's PPS 2020, soon to be replaced by PPS 2024. It has to be consistent with the Northern Growth Plan. The Northern Growth Plan is so vague, I've never seen it impact a decision, but you still want to make sure you're not violating it. Your decisions have to conform strictly with your official plan and your zoning bylaw, or otherwise conform to them if someone's seeking an amendment, as do minor variances and consent decisions and subdivision decisions. So Bill 23, so we're going back to October 2022. It got royal assent November 30th, 2022. And I'll first talk about briefly the key provisions that came into force. So a big one, removal of third-party appeal rights for minor variance and consents to sever. So, and that dates back to October 25th, 2022. If an appeal was not scheduled for a third party, so a neighbor, a community group, a taxpayer group, an environmental group, by that date, their appeal's gone to minor variances and consents. And going forward, they cannot appeal. Okay, so this relieves a huge burden on the tribunal. Municipalities, it has pros and cons, but those appeal rights are gone. There was a removal of the prohibition on requests for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments within 2 years of applying for one or a minor variance, right? So now people can just keep applying. That's in force. The minister may amend the official plan if it impacts provincial interests. That's enforced. Another big one, an automatic right to 3 units on any serviced residential lot in Ontario. So you can have 2 in the main, 1 in the yard. There's no minimum size. It can't be zoned out. It just has to be Building Code Act compliant for safety purposes. So as of November 30th, 2022, anyone, like on my residential lot, I could add one in the basement. I could put a tiny home in my yard as my son wants. And no one can stop me as long as it's building code compliant. So that's a really big change. No draft plans of subdivision required in advance of public meetings in force. Developments up to 10 units are no longer subject to site plan control. And site plan control doesn't apply at all any longer to character elements such as landscaping, exterior elements to match the character of the neighborhood. You're not allowed to do that. You can only have site plan control on 10 or more unit developments regarding health and safety and sustainable design components per the Building Code Act. So character used to be a huge debatable issue. They're trying to get rid of that. And there's some changes, some minor changes to that in Bill 185 I'll talk about in a minute. The minister may regulate the replacement of rental units on demolition. That's not in force. And again, it's revisited in Bill 185. Exempting affordable housing and attainable housing, which is not yet defined, from development charges, parkland dedication or cash in lieu requirements, and community benefit charges, right? So they don't apply to any developments or the extent of the affordable and attainable units and developments. That's not in force. Maximum of 5% units can be required to be affordable for a maximum of 25 years. So that's per the provincial policy statement definition of 80% of market value or rent at the time. Another big one, it's not in force yet, but the Ontario Land Tribunals Act amendment. They will now be allowed to assign costs in the cause if you're unsuccessful on an appeal. So this is a big deal, right? Tribunals normally do not award costs to allow access of the general public and lay people to the system without fear. The Ontario Land Tribunal, much like courts now, will be able to say, you lose, you pay. Right? And that can be a very big deal if you're up against a significant developer who's incurred a lot of costs on environmental and other impact studies. You could be in for a significant legal bill. And I'll talk about some tips in that regard. Like if you have some old appeals, say they were like the last group's decision that were not good, you may choose to not want to appear on appeal at the OLT to remove yourself from being threatened with costs. We don't know how the tribunal is going to treat that, but it's a very clear amendment. So in big issues, and sometimes legal bills run $400,000 or $500,000 on big developments. So it's really important. As you probably are aware, the Conservation Authority Act proposed to be changed, and recent did come into effect April 1st, 2024, removing the 36 regulations across the province of different areas. It's now one regulation. Now development is allowed in wetlands, right? Permits can only be restricted on flooding and natural hazards. They can no longer consider the environment, endangered species, wetland complexes as a whole. And they are not allowed to speak to the tribunal about those issues. They're only allowed to speak to the tribunal as of January 1st, 2023 about flooding and natural hazards. They're not allowed to give evidence on anything else. So that dumps it over to the municipalities. If they care about those issues, they're going to have to pick that up themselves. So it's more work, more money being downloaded to the municipality. Heritage Act changes, again, not in force either yet. You want anything to notice of intent to designate a property will not be allowed to happen once an application's been submitted. If it wasn't on the registry before, you're out of luck. So you want stuff on your registry that you're considered dedicating, and then you want to give it that designation. Parkland rates will be frozen on the date of application to a maximum of 10% of the land or cash in lieu for parcels up to 5 hectares, 15% for larger ones. And interestingly, the proponent's now going to be able to choose what they give you, which can include easements and other encumbered lands, privately owned public open spaces. And if you don't like it, you can appeal to the tribunal. So this is a whole new area of fight. And there will be many appeals on that. And lastly, on Bill 23, that's not enforced yet, is a park plan will be required by the municipality prior to passing any new parkland dedication bylaw. And you'll have to spend 60% of your parkland reserves at the beginning of each year. So no longer will you be able to save them up to create a big park. So as they were trying to do with Rail Deck Park in Toronto over the rail yards, you'll have to spend 60% of that money at the beginning of each year. So then we skip up to last spring, we get Bill 97, again, Helping Homebuyers Protecting Tenants Act. It's amazing trying to keep up with these titles. That was introduced last April 6th for further amendments to the Development Charges Act, the Municipal Act, Planning Act, and the Residential Tenancies Act. None of it's enforced yet, but it's coming, right? The ministers, again, regulate demolition of rental units and control municipal planning instruments in that regard, and we'll see how that plays out in Bill 185. Regulate the compensation to tenants, minimum requirement for replacement units in terms of size and price, first right of refusal of tenants to go back in once the renos are done. So it's trying to secure those units for those people and end rent evictions. Bill 97 also proposes to reinstate appeals of interim control bylaws at an earlier time. So you used to only be able to appeal an interim control bylaw, which you passed to study an issue in view of a development application. It's a very sort of draconian remedy, but if something big comes in and you're not prepared, you pass an interim control bylaw in good faith to study the issue for a year, and you can extend for a year. You used to only be able to appeal that extension. Under Bill 97, once it's in force, you'll be able to appeal the interim control bylaw itself, or sorry, applicants will be able to appeal, and those other specified persons like public utilities within 50 days of passing of the interim control bylaw. The minister under Bill 97 will be able to apply site plan control to developments of 10 units or less as well if they're within 120 meters of a shoreline or 300 meters of a rail line. So there will be site plan control in those areas coming into force. They clarify again on these additional residential units, or ARUs, as we call them in the business. So the 3 I can have on my lot, that you can have 1 or more parking spaces required for the main unit, but you can only add 1 required space in zoning for the 2 additional units. So you may want to up your minimum requirements for the main unit if it's an area with parking concerns. And of course, we live in an area where the transit is, so given the population use. So cars are much more needed than, say, in Toronto, where on the tribunal, we routinely approved projects with 0 parking, right? So you're going to have to consider, in view of this in-force 3 units, looking at your zoning bylaws, there's going to be enough parking, for these additional residents. It can become a really big problem. Like in Thunder Bay, you're not allowed to stay in one on-street spot over 24 hours, and then there's winter restrictions. So it can become a big issue. They propose in Bill 97 taking out the definition of employment lands to remove office, commercial, and institutional, leaving only industrial and manufacturing, right? So the PPS is also going to remove this, and because the conversion to residential units from employment lands had very strict criteria, and it was very inhibiting. And the land use compatibility issues are generally with industrial or manufacturing, not with institutional uses or warehousing or stuff like that. You don't have the noise, vibration, pollution. So again, it's to support housing development near those bodies. And a proposed amendment to the Residential Tenancies Act in view of climate change to regulate and permit window and portable AC units and to regulate the rent increases in that regard. So that's Bill 97, just a few little things not in force yet. Then we get to Bill 185, which was introduced April 10th, 2024. It's gone through second reading and it's at committee. So it's the Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act. And it is obviously not enforced, but it proposes the following, right? To repeal application refunds for non-decisions within statutory timeframes for, official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments. That was to encourage municipalities to do their job. What happened was it ended up the municipalities front loading in the consultation period all kinds of requirements that led to a whole bunch of appeals to OLT by applicants, and it actually didn't speed anything up. So they're going to remove that application refund thing, and they're also going to remove the mandatory pre-consultation. Now it'll be optional for the applicant, right? So that's going to be a really big change. They allow Bill 185 propose removing the Planning Act application to these 3 units on any residential lot altogether, and that you can only regulate through the Planning Act after 3 units. Not quite sure how that's going to work. And how they also want to make it inapplicable to public service facilities such as schools, hospitals, long-term cares, and post-secondary institutions. We'll have to see what they have in mind, because you can't just have a new hospital built with no planning regulation. But we'll see, because there's, as you know, many, many issues around servicing capacity, et cetera. They again are proposing, as they did in Bill 23, and they backtracked, but they put it back. So it's coming. When I talk to my political and Bay Street planning lawyer sources, it's really coming this time. They're going to remove third-party appeal rights to zoning bylaws, official plans, zoning bylaw amendments, official plan amendments. So again, neighbors, community, taxpayer, environmental groups will no longer be able to jump in and appeal those decisions. Only the municipality or a planning board in an organized territory, the applicant, or again, these specified persons that are defined as public utilities, rail, and public bodies that are generally consulted on planning decisions. So if a hearing on an appeal wasn't scheduled by April 10th, 2024. Once this passes, like a third-party appeal, they just get wiped off the roster at the tribunal. They're just gone. No fee refund, no nothing, just disappear. And I have a bunch of communities in that situation where appeals will just vanish, right? Once Bill 185 comes into effect. Another significant one is people could only apply for an expansion of your settlement area upon the 5-year comprehensive official plan review with the ministry. Now they'll be able to apply once Bill 185 is in effect at any time to expand your settlement area, which has big implications for servicing. And there will, as long as they're not in the Greenbelt lands, and we won't get into that, that's not our problem. And there will be an OLT appeal allowed for the applicant, the municipality, and specified persons on expansion requests. Bill 185 proposes to mandate time-lapse approval conditions for site plans and draft plans of subdivision 3 years or more, starting upon the end of any OLT appeal related to it. And this is and I see this all the time, where a plan of subdivision has been approved and it's like 18 years later and the conditions don't hold up to the modern context, and it becomes a really big problem. And they also don't want developers getting an approval and tying up land for super long periods of time, as opposed to pulling permits and actually building housing. They are also proposed to open up appeals again on the complete application issue. So again, when there was the mandatory consultation going on, pre-consultation going on, there were a lot of fights about when the application was complete or not. And they could only appeal within 30 days of a decision being made. Now they'll be able to appeal the applicants anytime after they pay the application fee, to fight you and say, no, my application is complete. I don't have to give you these other things, right? Yeah, so pre-consultation on draft plans, subdivision, minor variances, etc., will be optional and not mandatory. So this is a big change, right? You won't be able to demand all these things at the outset in pre-consultation. They'll apply, and you will then ask for things. You might get in a fight about a complete application, a fight about what's required, and that can all go to the tribunal. It's not required to deem an application complete. Site plans without permits pulled can be canceled after 3 years, and a time will be set by regulation for canceling plans of subdivision as well, right? If they haven't pulled the permits and started to break ground, 3 years plus to be set, that may vary for plans of subdivision, it's vacated. The decision's gone with no right of appeal. There'll be a new municipal authority to have under the Municipal Act to track water and sewer capacity and to allocate same, and to cancel that allocation after a period of time if they're not building housing, right? So that's going to be a new 86.1 of the Municipal Act once this comes into force, and there'll be no appeal to the OLT of that decision, right? They also propose, this one's interesting, to add a 106.1 to the Municipal Act to permit bonusing to for-profit commercial manufacturing and industrial entities if it's deemed by the minister to be in the provincial interest. So generally, bonusing prohibits giving money, borrowing land at less than fair market value, guarantees, etc., to any for-profit entity if it is, you know, a bonus to them versus a competitor versus another municipality where they may locate or be considering locating. This provision would allow you to do it upon ministerial approval, saying, no, this, say a big industry wants to come to your community, the minister will be able to say yes, and you can give them whatever they want in terms of incentives without someone bringing a bonusing challenge to court to kill that. So that's a pretty big change. Then we get to the provincial policy statement. And again, we think about that hierarchy: provincial policy statement, Northern Growth Plan, official plan, zoning bylaw. Once PPS 2024 is made effective by the minister, because this isn't legislation, it's a policy statement, and it's issued pursuant to Section 3 of the Planning Act, which requires all your decisions to be consistent with it once it's effective, right? It will not include, the Northern Growth Plan will stay separate. The Greater Golden Horseshoe Growth Plan will become part of the PPS. So again, not our problem here. But you will need to be consistent with the PPS 24 once it's in effect. And what it proposes to do, again, it reinforces Bill 97, saying you can increase the settlement area at any time upon application. And it will remove all the mandatory criteria that had to be met in PPS 2020. And now you'll just have to consider things versus meet criteria, right? You'll need to consider the need, not show a need. You'll need to consider housing. You'll need to consider the availability of services and infrastructure, impacts on agricultural uses, consider the minimum separation distances in the Ministry of Environment D6 guidelines on rail, industry, noise and vibration, etc. And consider water and sewer capacity. as opposed to demonstrating those things to increase a settlement area on your own or by an applicant. Again, as Bill 97, it talks about removing the employment lands definition, changing it and removing the strict criteria in PPS 2020 of converting employment lands to other uses, most often residential uses or mixed residential commercial uses. And when those lands are not required for employment long-term, there's no serious impact on the remaining employment lands, there are available services, etc. This one's interesting too. So it used to be a really big issue that if you were proposing sensitive uses, residential uses near employment lands, it was almost a reverse onus of the industry not having to have severe impact on those proposed sensitive uses. That's being reversed. So now residential uses can go in unless it's shown there will be a negative impact on the industries, right? And how that can take place is complaints to the MOE under certificates of approval or other conditions of approval on those industries. And those can lead to, investigations, charges, mitigation that's very expensive. So you're going to see a lot of industries. This is very bizarre considering they want housing, fighting off housing on this basis. No longer will you use provincial mapping for prime agricultural lands. You'll have to use your own. So that gives you a lot more flexibility, especially municipalities with a lot of rural agricultural lands. You'll be able to designate prime agricultural lands yourself. And they then lessen the criteria for intrusion into agricultural lands for residential use. When they proposed a new PPS last year, 2023, they were talking about allowing 4 residential lots on an agricultural parcel. They've rolled that back. Now you can have up to, I believe they're proposing up to 3 residences on in close proximity to the one residence on the agricultural lands, but not consents to allow for 3 more lots. And if you meet minimum separation distances in those D6 MOE guidelines, can show compatible with the agricultural use, adequate sewer and water, close to the main residence in a cluster, and can only require an agricultural impact report if a really serious concern is indicated. So there's no longer strict land use compatibility criteria for that or the employment lands. It'll be just consider the need. Consider assessing alternative locations and adverse effects, and consider the minimum separation guidelines. Nothing's fixed anymore. Once this comes into effect, it's going to give you a lot more flexibility for individual circumstances. And I'm involved in one recently where a community was like, yeah, this little medical clinic can go in these lands. It's just a quiet little medical clinic, and it's opposed by agricultural users in the area. So something like that would be a lot more easier to approve once these changes come into effect. It was a little over prohibitive before, in my view. Environmental contamination will have to be assessed and remediated before any further development on any site. So that's a big cost. Second level environmental assessments can easily run into 6 figures, but that will be clear in the PPS that has to be done. Only 25-year growth plans required, housing projections for 25 to 30 years. And they remove the requirement for healthy, livable and safe communities and replace it with to consider only environmental harm or health and safety concerns. So the livable communities thing, the healthy livable communities thing was really about walkable mixed communities and encouraging that where there were services and employment right by the residential uses. They're getting rid of that. Probably not a great idea in terms of climate change and affordability, infill, and all of those things, but that's what they're doing. So again, they're really limiting, much like wetlands. It has to be a very serious concern of public safety, or else you can go ahead. So these are big moves back from environmental protection and climate change. So if a municipality wants to do those things, they're going to have to get creative and do it on their own end. It's not going to be protected from the PPS down. You have to be consistent, but you can be creative to still require some of those things without violating the PPS. There's going to be new provisions that really encourage underutilized or redevelopment of underutilized commercial and institutional buildings. You know, you have empty public buildings, consider converting them to residential, or really supporting people who want to look at doing that. And we know, like, for instance, Toronto downtown, all of those buildings, you know, the vacancy rate is coming up soon on a lot of those leases. And so there's a lot of exploration of conversion there, because remote work or hybrid work is not going away. The genie will not go back in the bottle. And encouraging infill and redevelopment in built up areas. The last one I'll talk about is Indigenous consultation. So this is a Section 35 constitutional right to have existing recognized treaty rights protected to the point of minimal impairment, and to consult on and accommodate claimed rights that haven't been determined yet at law. And so that could come up if there's a land claim over part of your municipal area, or there's treaty rights over your municipal area. And those treaty rights can always still, like hunting, can still be exercised as long as there's not an incompatible use on the land, right? Like a house or a building. But if it's vacant land and someone has treaty rights and they want to hunt there, they can. And so if there's a proposed development now, where this is always a Crown obligation, but they can delegate it down. And they've never really done that in terms of planning until PPS 24. It was proposed last year as well in that draft that didn't go ahead. That becomes your obligation. So this is a big one. You'll probably want some advice, unless you have someone in-house who really knows these rights and how they work. And, you know, you want to consult really early. You want to be friends with your First Nation neighbors. You want to not offend by doing it as a last minute thought. And you want to make sure any impacts are taken seriously and addressed to the greatest extent possible, because the last thing you want is to get into a big court battle with your neighbors, right? So tips, you know, again, that hierarchy, and every decision you make, respect that hierarchy. Watch for PPS 24 coming into effect by the minister saying so. Watch for Bill 185 and 97 coming into effect, and the other Bill 23 provisions. And I recommend a website, the Osler website. Everybody, Osler is a very notable law firm in Toronto, www.osler.com. They have great up-to-date summaries immediately with enforced and not enforced charts and comparative documents to previous versions. So it's just a really, really good handy resource to bookmark on your on your computer if you're in land use planning at all, so you know what is in force and what is not in force. Get advice on this changing landscape if it's a big approval, either from a really experienced professional land use planner that's been to the Ontario Land Tribunal multiple times, or an experienced and up-to-date legal counsel. Make sure your decision can be supported at the Ontario Land Tribunal on appeal, because you do not want to be open to costs in the cause, which can be enormous. So you pay your own lawyer fees and the other side's lawyer fees. And again, unlike a court where they're very sophisticated in assessing what reasonable costs are, and to change, sorry, I got distracted by the message. What reasonable costs are, and they have an assessment procedure for challenges. In a tribunal, you just have appointed members. Some are lawyers, some are planners, some have no idea about costs. So you could end up being with some massive, massive cost award and really no way to challenge it. And of course, like I said at the beginning, you can choose to not participate in an appeal. Municipalities do it all the time, or I advise them, if you think you're going to lose, don't participate, but you can show up just and say, we're just here to observe and be helpful. If you need a document, we'll get it for you. If you need the whole zoning bylaw or an OP, without actually participating and opening yourself to cause. So I know that's a lot. If you have any questions, you can contact me anytime, and I can walk you through it. But again, I just put that OSLR website into your browser favorites and keep on top of it if you're in this area.
Great. Thank you so much, Chantelle.
I know, that was like speed planning law.
Yeah. There's so much information in such a short period of time.
And it's moving really fast. So I think, though, this is kind of the end. We had Bill 2397, 185. I think they've been sort of fixing it in each one and getting straight what they're actually going to do. So I think this should be sort of the end of the major changes coming.
Yeah. I think we have two questions. So one is, if someone wants to build two residences on one rural parcel, could they only do that if one is considered a tiny home?
Well, again, that automatic right to 3 units only applies to service lots, right? Municipally service lots. So if you're on a well and a septic, it doesn't apply, right? Then you have to look at your official plan and zoning bylaw. Is it permitted? If it's not permitted, then you may need a consent to sever to get another lot in order to permit an additional residence. Yeah.
Perfect.
And that website again is just www.osler, OSLER, .com. Yeah. Great site. Yeah.
Thank you. I have, okay. Oh, is that the same thing? Is that the lawyer's website that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So that answers that question.
And I'm at Potestio Law, if anyone wants to find my website. So, we're online, and our website has all our contact information.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess there's no presentation to share, but we will put our videos up on YouTube. So we recorded this so that people can watch after.
Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chantelle.
Bye.
Bye. And so now we will take a little break until 11 o'clock. So about 6 minutes for anybody to go and grab drinks or a bathroom break for whatever reason. And we'll meet back here at 11. So we'll see everyone soon. You will.
Hi, thanks, Andrea. I'm really excited to be here. I was just saying to Andrea earlier is that the time zone, I forget that I am over here in Winnipeg, but some of you folks are on my time zone. So I'm really glad that we all could get together and use technology to come together. I have a little presentation, but I'll just give you kind of the highlights of what's going to happen in the next 30 minutes or so. I like to have some engaging conversation with folks. So if you feel comfortable to come off mute, we're a small group here today. So please chime in when the spirit moves you, or use the chat. I'm also going to ask you to use some Zoom tools. Zoom's created a lot of little interactive tools. So maybe something might be new to you today, either in presentation or in the information that I share. So I'm just looking for some interaction today. I think that's the best way to kind of grab hold of that information and take it forward. This presentation, I'll get started, and we'll see where we go. So let's go. All right. Here we are. I know here I am. I have a hard time seeing myself in the slides, and so I put myself right in the slides today, so I can see the chat and see everyone here. So thanks, Andrea, for the invitation to speak today around career conversations and helping build a really engaged and empowered team. When we have a team that is engaged, when we're engaged in the work that we do, we just show up so much differently at work. And then this has ripple effects. It has ripples into the teams that we work with and into the communities that we serve. So just to give you a tiny little background about myself, I talk a lot about empowerment because that was something I never really considered when I was working. I thought that if I just showed up at my job and I worked really, really hard, then I would get recognition and probably eventually promoted. I thought I would work for the same organization for years, if not decades. And that's just not true. I did lead a corporate life before starting my own business, but that life was designed for me, not by me. And as a high performer, there were always career opportunities that were placed in front of me that I knew I could do. But never once did I advocate for what I wanted. After years of being successful, I kind of found myself in a role at an organization that was really misaligned with my values. And I found myself very, very far away from what I really wanted to be doing. And I was on my way to burnout. And rather than the career success that I thought I would have, I was struggling. I now teach folks how to get back in the driver's seat of their own careers and be designers of their own professional journey. So they are empowered, engaged, and successful on their own terms. With over 2 decades of experience in product and project management and continuous improvement, I've really taken what I've learned from my previous life and my previous career and really folded it into helping folks. And now I spearhead my own business here in Winnipeg. Pivoting Point Career Solutions has all kinds of products and programs to help foster career engagement, facilitate career planning, and nurture leadership skills, all while emphasizing how we use our individual gifts, our talents. I call them our superpowers, because when we can really see what that is, we create a career that's really centered around ourselves, and we service, like I said, we service everyone a little bit differently when we're in service. So what is a career conversation and why does it matter? I would love for folks to come on and use your little annotation tool just and scribble on this screen here. So at the very top of your screen, you should see a little drop down arrow that maybe says view options. And under there, when you click it, you will see the word annotate. And when you click on that, a little menu will pop up and you get these options to write text or create a little stamp. And so find the stamp and see if you can create something here on the screen with your annotate tool. I would really love to see that. And let me know if you can't find it or if you're having any problems. If you're on a mobile device, it's a little bit different, but you can tap the screen and then a little menu should pop up and you'll be able to do that. It doesn't look like you have the tool. Let's see if I can.
I can't see it.
I can't find it either.
Might be the version we're using.
It could be. Let me see if I can. Well, how about in the chat then, if we can't find these annotate tools? I would love to know if anyone has had what they would consider a career conversation with their leader or with their team in the last year or so. So Often we have or think about having career conversations at performance review time, or in an annual cycle, when folks are up for a raise or up for a promotion of some kind, or they want to do the next one. Yeah, thanks, Nikita. It is sometimes about succession planning, right? You talked about who's coming in, who's up for development, but sometimes that all happens in a bit of a silo. Having a career conversation at review time is really about your performance that's happened in the past. It's not about what you want to be doing in the present or in the future. And so sometimes we think we're having career conversations with folks about what they want or what they're looking for, but really it's about what they've done in the past and how we're evaluating them. So when I talk about career conversations, what I'm talking about is a structured kind of framework, a dialogue that you're having with your team or you're having with your leader or mentor that's talking very specifically about career goals, development opportunities, what are some potential next steps or potential openings or things like that. And it's really meant to explore what the aspirations are, like what you really want to be doing. Sometimes we know what we want, but we don't know what the job title is, or we don't even know what we don't know sometimes when we're having career conversations. We know what we like, we know what we don't like, but we don't know how that all fits together. And so career conversation kind of really helps an individual kind of set these goals. And it also helps you as a leader try to figure out like what the heck makes this person tick. And when we can come together and have a great conversation, it really empowers your team so that they are now more engaged and they're more, I don't want to say the word hungry, but they're really eager and excited to see about what that next opportunity is because it aligns with who they are and what they want to be doing. So here's I was gonna have like some fancy annotate like screen here where everyone could jump in and mark up the screen about why and what career conversations can actually do for your team and for you. There's a lot of research out there that talks about how engaged employees really show up differently at work. And when folks are engaged and they feel empowered by their own career choices and what they're doing, it has all of these things here. Really strengthen the team, and it increases, it builds retention. When folks are really engaged and plugged into the work they're doing, it fosters leadership, it enhances well-being down there. And our whole mental health is impacted by how we feel like we're in control or not in control of the work that we do. It encourages over here innovation and creativity for here. And those are two things that are impacted so greatly by burnout and overwhelm. We lose our capacity to connect into our creative problem solving and our innovative ideas when we are just struggling with busy work or things that we actually even don't like to do. When we can build a great team, that has ripple effects into our community. We show up differently in our community when we show up differently at work. So strategies for a great career conversation. It's really about, as a leader, helping the employee stay focused and in control actually of the conversation. And we want to keep our conversations that we're having with our team members and direct reports really focused on current situations and very, very proactive. Oftentimes we can get stuck in the things that aren't working, and what we want to be doing is highlighting the things that are working. They are very solution focused, so it's not about necessarily solving problems. What it is about helping the employee create solutions for what they see as a concern or an issue. Career conversations are also very action oriented. So this is a conversation that happens between a leader and an employee, and people are walking away with things to do about their careers, things to think about, things to research, people to talk to. And so it is very action oriented, but it's not necessarily on the leader to take all the action. It's on the employee to find ways to have those conversations or to find out more information on their own so that, again, they are feeling empowered to make steps towards their future career path. I don't know about you folks, but I know back in the day when I had started working or even interviewing, there was often this interview question that talked about, where do you want to be in 5 years? And it was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know where I want to be in 5 years. I just want to I want to have this job and I want to work really hard. And it feels like it's a place where I can share my skills and my talents. And I've never really thought about my career kind of past the year that was in front of me because it got really overwhelming and really daunting. And in my business, Pivoting Point, I really help folks try to figure out what that can look like without getting attached to necessarily a job title or a promotion, because those things are so much outside of our control. Even as leaders, we don't always have a promotion available or a position available for someone. And so talking about career paths and career journeys can feel kind of sticky because it's like, I don't know what's there. But we never really know what's there. And so we don't want to shy away from having these great conversations and really helping the employee just be more self-aware of the things that they want to be doing and how to be more proactive in their own development, either an upskill or a leadership skill. So oftentimes I sort of talk a little bit about the challenges of leaders that we struggle with when we do have career conversations with people. We don't know what to say. We don't know, over time, how do we balance the needs of the employees with the needs of the business and the community? What can that look like? Have no hot clue what that looks like often. And so we shy away from these challenges. The lack of understanding, like sometimes we go into succession planning and we're not even really sure that somebody is actually wanting to stay around and be promoted or get to that next level. Some folks don't know enough about leadership or management or senior management to even know that that's what they want to do next. And we think maybe they do. So we're not having these conversations with folks. We don't really know what's going on. And I think it's really hard for us to know, like, where are our gaps in the community and in the organization. We often don't have actionable follow-up. It's a conversation that happens once a year to say, where are your goals and what are you doing? But we're not really actioning on anything throughout the year and helping folks stay consistent, engaged, and employees sometimes are reluctant to really talk about what they want because they think that maybe their job's on the line if they think about that too much. All right. So there's a framework to help folks. I'm just going to touch on the highlights, but before I jump into the framework to kind of help with career conversations, I was curious if anyone had any comments or outbursts. Let me know and see what what's going on out there. So I feel like I talk a lot. And as a coach, I actually don't do a lot of talking. It's a lot of questioning. All right, so I've developed a little bit of a framework, and I want to kind of dive into how to help with these conversations. So I'm going to talk about this framework both from the employee. So you have a leader maybe that you're struggling with to try to find your way. Like, how do you initiate these conversations even? Oftentimes leaders are put into roles without without all of the leadership support that they need. And so sometimes they don't know, right? They're not on this call. They haven't heard of career conversations. And so how do you as an employee talk to your leadership about what it is that you want to be doing? But the framework also works from how do you as a leader talk to your team about that? And I have resources that I'm going to share at the end of our time together from those two perspectives. So how do you plan for a career conversation with your leader? And then as a leader, how do you plan with your employee? Oftentimes career conversations are, or even kind of these small little bits that are tagged on to meetings at the end. Oftentimes we have one-on-one meetings that become maybe program updates or progress updates. And then it's like, oh, by the way, what's going on in your job? Or like, there's these little small snippets, or how can I support you? Or what's your challenge that you're facing today? If we're lucky, we have those moments. Those moments are small, and it doesn't allow for the very first, most important step in a career conversation. And then that's really the preparation of a conversation. And so that's the employee taking the time to know what it is that they want. There's some self-awareness that needs to be kind of bubbled to the surface, that is really, really helpful. And this preparation part for the employee really helps with their own discovery. And then it also sets the stage that the ownership belongs to the person who has the career. Right? We give our power away to our organizations and our leaders so often because we assume they know what's next for us, and they don't. But we make that assumption. And so really starting and setting the framework with that creation piece. For sure. And so as a leader, having that information and setting the stage before you even, set the meeting, or in the meeting, the agenda, it is to say, hey, this is going to be a little bit different of a conversation. So I want to know more about what you want from your work here, or your role, or what you're looking for. And I have some questions as a resource to kind of help with that. But you either take it on yourself or you provide that for your employee. Trust is kind of the next step, and that's really about setting the container, and that you want to be really clear about what the outcome is for the conversation. Transparency is key for trust, and as we build that, we want to make sure that we're really clear about what this conversation is all about. And that we want to have, and start building that trust. It's not about solving problems. A career conversation sometimes doesn't come with any solution. It might just come with more questions. But setting that space and that expectation is key. And then there's the exploration, right? There's asking insightful questions. It's finding out more about what folks want, what they like, what challenges or skills do they feel that they're lacking and they would love to add to their toolbox. And when I talk about skills, it's leadership skills, and it's technical on the job skills as well. Or maybe there's something tangent that they're really curious about learning. These enable an employee to kind of find different areas within the municipality where they can serve, maybe where their strengths are, where they want to really be. And so it is trying to find where folks fit, but it's really about exploration before we try to fit them in a box. It's about you asking as an employee really great questions, understanding about what your strengths, your gifts, your talents are, and getting some feedback from your leader about what that can look like. And then really sharing, right? Finding and understanding what motivates an employee. Do they love to learn, or are they very here because of a different reason? What are their aspirations? What brought them into the space? And do they see themselves doing that job for very long? What do they see? Where do they want to grow? And being really open to the conversation. Again, it's not about solving problems. It's about just finding out information so that everyone is coming from the same page. And you're on the same space. And then there's action, having what's next, asking your leader where you might need support or what feedback they might have. As a leader, what is the employee going to do? Are they going to reach out? Are they going to talk to someone? Are they going to explore some resources or what that can look like? So that's the framework. And I really understand that this is really about shifting the focus from like, whoever owns the career is the driver. I often think about this as a career journey, and we are the drivers of our own career. And what we have the insight, and we want to shift the focus from being a passenger to being the driver, and really doing that as a leader, asking really powerful questions. Those aren't necessarily how questions, those are what questions and why questions. What's interesting to you? Why is that interesting? Instead of how do you get more interesting work? So there's a little difference there, but you really want to explore. Be open to out of the box thinking, build that trust, and know that there's some confidentiality that goes into that. We're all so scared sometimes that what we say is going to land in a place that maybe we didn't intend it to land. So having that trust and really being clear about what information gets shared and what doesn't is really crucial to that. And then focusing on that solution focus. It's not about what's not working, it's about what is working and how do we amplify that and move through that. So that's me. I talked a lot, and I'm gonna just take a break, and we have a few minutes, 4 minutes or so for any questions. But you can use this QR code. There's one up here, way up there. That's for these free resources that I have. And then the one down below is you can connect with me. You can find me in LinkedIn, you can find me online, and I'll be really happy to help support you if you have any questions about the resources or anything at all. So I'm stopping.
Thanks so much, Lois. And just to clarify for everyone, I'll grab your slides from you after.
Absolutely.
And I can share it with everyone. I did have an anonymous question come in regarding leadership. So what would you suggest in a situation? How would you navigate it when you are trying to work out something with leadership and you feel you know more about the subject matter than your own leaders? How would you navigate a situation like that?
So I always lead with curiosity, really, and trying to understand where everyone is coming from. As like I said, a lot of leaders, we're promoted and we're put into leadership roles because we were really good at our last job. Right. And we're not always set up for success to be a really great leader. And if you have leadership skills, open that conversation and be curious as to what kind of leadership style your leader might have. Ask some really open questions about what they see, or if they're even open for feedback. And building that trust with your leader. If you are in a psychologically unsafe environment, these conversations aren't going to happen, right? It happens with trust, how you start to build trust with your leader, and that you are there to co-create, right, your own career path, but then also what's happening in your current role. What are your current challenges, and how can your leader support you? We're not all blessed with great leaders, right, throughout our lives. But when we can find a way to be really curious and lead with that, we might be able to find a common thread where we do agree, or where we understand where that support is. I hope that's helpful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Is there any other questions? And feel free to send them through the chat or come online and ask them yourselves. I didn't get any more in the chat. That was the one from the chat that I got. So I'm just to give everybody a couple more seconds in case they're thinking through. Oh, yes, I have for an individual just starting their career and not knowing what to do or what starting point for that career trajectory send off, what would you suggest? Where would they start?
Yeah, so the way I coach and the way I've seen the most successful, and this is if you're early, if you're mid, anywhere in your career, it's really understanding about how you build your career from the inside out. And so we often go through, right, lots of education that is automatically kind of like putting us into the next step. And we see our careers as stairs instead of crazy crayon scribbles. My first step for all the folks that I work with is understanding your values, your gifts, and your strengths, and not to get so hooked on a job title or even an industry or a space. But understanding is like why you work, what you want from the world of work, and how that aligns with your values. Our values change throughout our lives. So it's something that we come back to often, but these create these guardrails, right? Because in a career journey, what we're looking for is how to craft a map, and we have a compass, right? And we don't necessarily have a destination or a location, but when we have a compass, we know that we can continue to move forward in the right direction. So starting with values and some self-reflection is what I would suggest.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lois. And that puts us, we are now at time. So thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to engage with you in the future.
Absolutely. I will share all those resources, including the slides, with everyone, with you, Andrea, so that you can share that around.
And I'll share
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a fantastic week.
Thanks. You too. And so now I'm going to invite Jessy. He is going to do a Pass the Prompts workshop with us. And if Jessy, do you have any slides that you need to share?
I don't have any slides to share.
Okay, perfect. Then
I will be doing it all natural.
All natural. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to pass the bucket over to you, Jessy. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, thank you. I'll catch that. And let's start with, I've rebranded since I initially signed up for this, and now it's the longevity game. And what is longevity? Longevity is a fancy word for long. Either a long life or a long term of service. Essentially, it's things going on for longer than expected. In this context, I'm using longevity to represent a mindset, because talking about longevity can help you avoid issues down the road. A long-term mindset can help you prevent burnout by making you realize the impact of your habits. It can prevent illness by making you aware of how you take care of yourself. And it can also prevent uncomfortable situations by getting employees to be realistic about their financial situations and the potential on how to improve it. I like to describe longevity as a juggling act. Now, I can't juggle yet, but imagine that you have 3 balls in your hands. One is mindset, one is health, and the third is finances. You need to keep juggling these balls. Otherwise, if you focus on one, say you're 100% gym rat and finances, and you drop the mindset, it's only a matter of time before you burn out, hit a wall, and crash. Now, some of you have undoubtedly worked in a toxic environment at one time or another. Those of you who have know how difficult it can be when you feel like you're walking on eggshells. Some people are sometimes hard to get along with. We all are. We all get grumpy days. And we usually cope with these difficult situations by avoiding the individuals. And that distance creates a rift within your company. And as soon as you have a rift, you have a break in communication, and that lack in communication prevents people from moving on and really working well together. There is a way to integrate even the most difficult of people into your team. And it's by talking with them and creating an environment where they listen to you. By having genuinely interesting conversations, we can start to build bridges to everyone in the office. Most problems, especially in uncooperative teams, are interpersonal relationship problems. If we can solve these, then we can help teams work together effectively. I don't know any of you in this session today, but today we're going to be a team together. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy days to be here with me. I consider it a blessing. To start this session, I'd like us all to take a moment just to count our breaths. 2 minutes, I'm not asking for an hour, just 2 minutes, because this is how I recommend starting the passive prompt sessions. Just start. Count 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale, all the way up to 10. When you get to 10, start back to 1. 1, 2. It's normal to get distracted. Feel free to close your eyes if you're comfortable with it. We'll all be waiting here when you get back. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice them and try to return to your breath. 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale, all the way to 10. We'll see each other in 2 minutes. Thank you all. I hope we are now all feeling a bit more relaxed. That little exercise was meant to ground you in the present moment. We often get distracted by the millions of things we're responsible for. These things prevent us from being present. The activity I am proposing, the longevity game, is aimed to break through that barrier of attention by creating a safe space for people to talk and listen. Most importantly, listen to each other by answering self-reflective questions that are not usually part of the office gossip. As a longevity coach and the president of my local Toastmasters club, I've been experimenting with this exercise for the past few years. And this experience has led me to believe that this system has potential. I've even played it at the airport with total strangers and had great reactions from them. It's hard to understand the impact an attentive audience can have on you until you've had the opportunity to talk to one. The workshop has 5 parts. The first was that little meditation that we just did. The second is what I want us to get into now. That is the pass the prompt, where we come up with an introduction to a question that we then ask someone. To make this fun and spontaneous, I will ask that anyone wanting to participate, which I would love for some of you to participate in this activity, to turn on your camera so I know I can call on you. If your camera is on when we start, it means you're keen to join in and may be called on to speak. Because there's a bit of a limit on time, we will form a triangle. I will start the first prompt, create a bit of an introduction for it, and then ask the question. This question will be passed to someone who will speak for at least 1 minute. That's the hard part, with a maximum of 2 minutes. I will show the time using the streetlight system. Green means thank you. Red means thank you. When the first speaker is done answering their question, it will then be their turn to pass the prompt to someone else, creating a short introduction for it and asking an unsuspecting person with their camera on, which currently there's 3 of us, so there will be a bit of suspect in there. That person will then answer their question and get their own list of questions. Don't worry, I have the questions preloaded. As soon as you're done talking, I will send it to you. You can choose which of the 3 questions you want, create an introduction for it, and then ask it. I see that we are 3 here. So let's begin. Problems. We all have problems. And I think the best thing I've ever seen and the best way I've ever seen it explained is that you never get rid of problems. You just trade bad problems for better problems. And you make your problems better and better and better until at some point you're happy about the problems that you have. Nikita, what are problems?
Okay, so I have to speak for at least a minute, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I personally feel that problems are often better looked at as opportunities for improvement. Problems aren't necessarily a bad thing. It just gives you the opportunity to look at something from a different perspective and work with your team to solve whatever the issue may be. yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you keep a negative mindset and you look at a problem in a negative way, then you're going to continue to get what you're coming to expect. But if you can spin it around and make it a positive thing, then you might get a little further. I don't know. Starting to look at how much time I have. It is hard to keep going a little bit, but I don't know what else to say.
Would you say that not having anything to say is a good problem to have right now?
I guess so.
All right, that brings us to time. I'll send you the question.
Okay.
Now it's your turn to choose a question, one of the three.
Okay.
Create a brief intro, and then as we are three with our cameras on, Andrea has been volunteered.
Obviously. Okay, what's a good one? Okay, so you said I have to expand on it a little bit. I don't just ask the one. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So Andrea, so nowadays work-life balance is always a huge topic of conversation in the workplace and something that people are looking for more and more when they're searching for a new place to work. In terms of your health at work, what could you do to improve your health?
Okay, my turn. Well, I do agree that work-life balance is absolutely important, and it's something I struggled with in the beginning of my career journey, and I've been working pretty adamantly about trying to improve that. So I always schedule set times in my day to ensure I get outside, try go do yoga every week. That's my personal thing that I enjoy doing. So for everybody, obviously, that's going to look different, but I get the added bonus of being from home, working from home. So I feel that that really provides me that flexibility where I just listen to what my body's asking me for in that moment and honor whatever it's asking for. And if that means that work gets pushed 10 minutes because, oh, I need to go and eat, or I need to go do this, I get the luxury of doing that. But even if I was in a workplace, having that conversation with whoever you're working with to try and honor just naturally what our body is asking of us, because, we can't just work endlessly as machines and expect good results. You have to honor who we are as people, and everybody's different. And so ensuring that you can bring your best self every day by doing those little things every day that help bring out the best in you. Oh man, that was like a catchphrase at the end there. That was catchphrase territory, I feel.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrea. I will now send you your questions, and you are up next.
Getting questions? Okay.
No, hold on. Yeah, here.
And then am I asking you these questions?
You create an introduction for one of them, and then you ask me that one.
One of them. Okay. Well, I think you're kind of nearing the beginning of this journey. This is something you've started in the last couple of years. So obviously there might be some things you like, things you don't like, things that are working well. So what is something that you most enjoy at work and as part of this new career journey you're on?
Well, now is the perfect time to ask. I was meant to send you a different batch of questions, but
I was
that's
going to
fine.
say these look similar because one of them is a repeat.
My work situation is changing. I actually put in my notice of termination today. In Europe, that's 2 months. So I will still be seeing these guys for the next 2 months, and then my life will be completely flipped upside down. What I've really enjoyed about my work so far has been the fact that I got to travel. I was working as a traveling winemaker in Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and I got to see the world and work and travel slow. Now I'm going to be going into a sales position where I will get to make relationships and talk with people. And that's what I want to work on, is my sales ability. So what I enjoy about work is the opportunity for growth. The way that I enjoy the work that I do is when I see work, I need to see a way that I am growing. Either I'm challenging myself or I am being challenged by my employer to be better. Because as long as you're in a workplace that forces you to grow, you're in the right place. If you get somewhere where you plateau and then there's no longer that growth, then it's time to do like I did today. Put in your notice and find something else where that growth will start again. Thank you, Nikita and Andrea, for participating in that session. And you probably noticed that you were about at the 30-second mark when you ran out of obvious things to say. That's usually where people run out of fuel. And that's why I put the minimum time, because then you're forced to ask yourself, well, what else is there? What else can I talk about? What else do I enjoy? And that's the power of this section. For the next part of the workshop, usually there would be a little break. We're on a time crunch, so we're going to skip the break. Sorry, guys. And go straight into part 4 of the session, which is the question. Now, I call it the question because for this part, we all take turns answering the same question. There is no minimum time, maximum time. The time is whatever you feel necessary to fully describe your idea. Now, usually this is volunteer. Katia, do you feel comfortable if I call on you to answer it?
Sure, yeah.
Sure. All right. Katia, what is your superpower?
My superpower. Okay. That's a hard one. Depends, like superpower in the sense of
What are you good at? What's your talent?
I'm a flexible friend. So like I'm up for anything. Like if my friends want to go to church, I'll go to church. If my friends want to go to a party, I'll go to a party. If my friends want to go to the gym, I'll go to the gym. If they want to go walking, I'll do it. So I'm a flexible friend, so I think that that's a good thing to have. I don't know.
All right. Thank you. And this one is powerful because you don't have the buildup. And when you have this in a group session, you have to think that everyone is answering the same question, right? And it's incredible because people tend to bounce off of each other's ideas. Where you mentioned, oh, I'm a flexible friend. And then the next person in the room might go on to talk about how they are as a friend and how they met friends via their superpower. I've been in a situation where someone described exactly what is getting into the flow with climbing. And they describe their ability to get into that state with whatever they're doing. And then someone else talked about a similar thing and what's incredibly powerful and what we don't do enough in most workplaces is create a space where our job is to listen attentively, put away the phones, close the laptops, and just pay attention to each other. During the first part of the game or the workshop, we are essentially in a coach and coachee relationship because we build up a question and then we ask it. In the second part, we are telling each other stories about our lives. And this contact levels the playing field and gives everyone in the room a voice, where especially the quiet ones, the ones that usually hang out at the back and they don't really say much. They come to the meetings, but they rather not participate in any way, like all the people that don't have their camera on right now. We're not looking at you, but we know you're there. Hey, guys. They're the quiet ones, and this is an opportunity to create a safe space where they can open up to each other. And that's essentially it. That is the main introduction and closing, or the first and the second and the third and the fourth part of the evening. And with all good things, it's important to have a nice, clean ending. And I saw that Samantha has now turned on her camera. Does that mean you're open to talking with the rest of the class?
I guess I mostly wanted to show that I'm not here alone. We're kind of here as a team today, sitting in, as we found this very intriguing, this workshop. And I guess I can't make that decision on my own to not participate. So as a group, I think collectively, we're all quite quiet, but I think as a group, we can come together and work up the courage to participate.
All right, perfect. Because I was going to call, I'm like I mentioned, it's important to have a proper close. And I want to close my little half-hour workshop with a final question. And this is how I would close any of these workshops, because the question can be asked over and over again. So would someone in the Samantha group please volunteer to answer, what have you learned during this session?
Okay, well, I can start, and anybody that wants to add can certainly add. But I think within this session, we've learned that it's okay to be nervous, but it's okay to speak up and I guess conquer your fears and lean on each other. It's important to take time for yourself, to step back for a bit, to take some quiet moments. The deep breathing was excellent. The 2-minute deep breathing. I know I'm usually being called out for the fact that when somebody is speaking to me, if a coworker comes to me or colleague comes to me with a question, or we're trying to work our way through a problem, I'm not always focused. So I do know they often make comments to me like, okay, are you making eye contact? Yeah. Are you focused? Can we talk now? Are we on the same level, right? So we can, because again, in our days, they go sideways every 30 seconds sometimes. There's always something else happening or something else going on, or an email goes off or a chat. Yeah, so it's hard to focus. Anybody want to add?
I really enjoyed the breathing part too, just because sometimes when you're challenged with a problem, emotions take control. Sometimes it's hard to regulate that. So that taking that time, that 2 minutes to just breathe, it puts it into perspective. It gives you time to react more calmly and rationally than if you just react immediately and approach a coworker with an issue. You can't, you're not coming off as a person looking for a solution. You're just coming off with anger or frustration, or it's not healthy. It's not healthy, and it's not conducive for team building for sure.
I kind of like the question as a team building exercise where we're getting to learn more about who's sitting around the table when you're asking that. I like that superpower question because it forces us to look at what our own skills are and what our own strengths are. And so often we have a hard time celebrating our own strengths and what we're good at. So it allows us to learn about ourselves and focus a bit more on what we're good at, but also learning about each other and how we can feed off of each other, like you had mentioned, the bouncing ideas. So I thought that was a really cool team building activity that we can do maybe during our own conversations and meetings and that kind of experience. So yeah, that's something I definitely took away from that.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in this session, especially those that contributed. If this session resonated with you, I'll put my email in the chat, and I'm more than happy to send you a free printable version of the game for you to try with your teams. Then you'll have several cards with 3 questions each that you can pass to each other, and then a couple examples of the question for the end. How does that sound for everyone? All right. Andrea, I hand the floor back to you.
Thanks so much, Jessy. That was wonderful. Getting put on the spot for those who are not exactly used to it all the time. So that was lovely. And I'll be putting this presentation up on YouTube so people can watch it after for those that weren't able to join us today. So thank you so much, Jessy, and enjoy the rest of your day. And now I would like to, I believe I saw her. Yes, there she is. Katia is going to be joining us. She'll be providing an update on a rural housing information system, making rural and northern data available and accessible. So I will pass the floor over to Katia, but in a moment, do you have a slide deck that you're going to be sharing?
I do. If I can share my screen, that would be great.
I will give you that ability right now. Just give me 1 second. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm just going to put it into full screen mode here. Oops, jumped ahead a slide. So thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity to come to speak to you this morning. I'm assuming that this presentation is being shared with the rest of NOMA's membership. It sounded like over YouTube after this session. So thank you for those of you that took the time out of your morning to come together to hear about it. I'm here to you today, a little bit different of switching gears from Jessy's presentation, which sounded interesting, to talk to you about data and rural and northern housing information and data. I've been working on a project that's called the Rural Housing Information System, and we're in the process of expanding that data system to the municipalities of Northern Ontario. So just to give you a little bit of context, I'm Katia Coughton. Like Andrea said, I'm the housing project manager with a nonprofit organization called the Rural Ontario Institute. We really work on building vision and voice and leadership in rural and in Northern Ontario. We offer leadership programs. We provide leaders with data and analysis to make informed decisions and to connect leaders so that they can share innovative practices around opportunities and challenge, ideally to see our rural municipalities in Ontario and in Northern Ontario thriving. So just to give you a little bit of background about the Rural Housing Information System, it was originally founded by the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus and the Rural Ontario Institute, our organization, in partnership with a private tech firm called Itergy. We were awarded $1.2 million in 2022 from CMHC's Housing Supply Challenge. And the intent was to develop a data solution to support affordable housing in our rural communities in Ontario. We've since built upon that platform with Eastern Ontario to add rural Western Ontario municipalities to the system. And we were able to do that in partnership with their Economic Development Corporation and their Wardens Caucus as well, and through continued financial support from CMHC and OMAFRA's Rural Economic Development Program. So currently today, the Rural Housing Information System features 223 municipalities' data, and we're currently growing it to Northern Ontario as well to feature the 145 municipalities of Northern Ontario. And we're doing this in partnership with the Northern Policy Institute, NOMA, PHENOM, and with financial support from FedNor. So what is the Rural Housing Information System, or the RHIS as we refer to it? It provides local, reliable, salient, and current rural and northern data to assist proponents and municipalities in the planning and construction of new and affordable housing. So today I'm going to give a little brief demonstration of what the system looks like. Normally we would do a live share of the system, but the only forward-facing profiles are rural Eastern Ontario and Western Ontario. And we thought it would be certainly more connecting to view some of the data that we're working on for the northern municipalities. So in today's session, I'm just going to share some screenshots of the system. So essentially, when you log into the system, on the back end of our staging side of the Rural Housing Information System, we are building out all the northern municipalities data. So we've just shared some screenshots today to give you a sense of what it looks like for Northern Ontario. So when you land on our home page, essentially you're selecting a district or a municipality that you're interested in viewing their data for. So as you can see, some of the options here, we've got Kenora District across the top, Rainy River and Thunder Bay. And you can open up the drop down to select any of the CSDs, those lower tier municipalities of that district, to view their information. So you would select a municipality or a district by clicking on it, and you would be able to move forward. So just to note that the site is available in both French and English for those of you that do speak French. So once you've selected a district or municipality that you're interested in viewing their data for, it will open up what we refer to as their overview page. So it provides you some summary default statistics around population, average household income, average shelter costs, average rent, those that are living in unaffordable housing, and the core housing need, whether it be for the district or one of its lower tier municipalities. We can't see further down this page from this screenshot, but it also provides a community asset map that shows where our parks, our hospitals, and where our services are in our community, so that you can get a good understanding of what is available in that community as well to encourage development or more housing development happening in that area. And because a lot of our rural communities don't have any immediate amenities in our communities within our municipal boundaries, it also shows an hour's drive outside of the municipal boundaries. So if you're driving to the hospital or driving to the school, you can get a good sense of where it would be outside of the municipality as well. It may be a consideration for Northern Ontario that we have to expand that map to show amenities that are within a 3 hours drive. As we know, people in Northern Ontario typically drive even further than an hour to get to services. So you will also be able to see all the data reports that are available for each of the district or the municipality that you're looking at once you've selected them from the overview page. So we've got demographics, economics, housing market, housing supply, we have development incentives, we have a zoning page, an ability to compare any of the municipalities, the data points, and as well a data and definitions source page there as well. So I'm just going to click forward to the demographics page. We're still looking at the District of Thunder Bay. So it would show information about population, population change, household makeup, medium age, and there's a number of data visualization charts that are shown that you can interact with them by clicking on whichever data point that you're interested in looking at. So if you wanted to look at the household makeups of the one-person households in Thunder Bay, you could turn off all the other elements of the graph to just view that one-person piece. Again, you also have that opportunity to click on the icon. So if you're looking at a data point that you're not sure exactly what it means, the definition is available there, and every graph has the ability to download that graph into an Excel document or a PDF if you wanted to use or manipulate that data in the future. The demographics page also shows our by name count for our districts or our municipalities if we have them, that information at the municipal level. So the social service boards have been very gracious in Northern Ontario to share our homelessness count with us. This is the only number that we're featuring around homelessness for our communities on the system currently, because all of our other lists that we collect that information with, whether it's rent geared to income lists, all of our municipalities kind of conduct that differently. So the only standardized methodology that we have for collecting homelessness is the by name count, which is featured on the demographics page. I don't believe there's a slide for the economics page, but it does provide all the economics information for that district or municipality, about income, low income, labor force. All of those details are included in the economics page. I think the next slide is for the housing market page that's shown here. And in this case, it's showing a lower tiers information. And really the housing market page is to give a good sense of the rentals that are available and the costs of housing in that community. So as you can see here, right at the top, we have the average asking rent for that community. We collect this information from classified ads. So Kijiji and rentals.ca is what we've been using across the boards for all of our municipalities to date. It's the few sites that we can collect rental classified information from without you know, doing anything that we're not able to do legally. You know, it's illegal to scrape other sites that might have rental information for our rural communities like Facebook. Unfortunately that we don't have information from Facebook's rental place or rental or marketplace, but we do have information from Kijiji and rentals.ca. So as I'm sure you all know, the rental information for our municipalities in rural Ontario and Northern Ontario is few and far between, but we are collecting information. And so below on the housing market page, there's quite a bit of information about rentals where they are available. So we've only started doing the rental collection for Northern Ontario municipalities that do have them. But over time, you will see a better idea about what the actual rental stock looks like in your community. Are they houses? Are they apartments? Are they basement suites? And what are they asking for those rental units as well? So it helps you to advocate what the actual rental market is in your community versus CMHC's asking market rent numbers that they have for our communities, which oftentimes they don't have them for rural municipalities, or that data is just not available through CMHC, or we're grouped in a region or a larger area, and it's really hard to discern what the actual asking rents are for our communities, which makes it challenging for us to ask money from the province or from the federal government to ensure that our services and needs are met around affordable housing benefits. It also does provide the information around the dwelling values as well. This information is only currently taken from the census. So as the real estate market is quite volatile, it's not giving us the most up-to-date information about what it actually costs to purchase a home in our municipalities. We've been spending, you know, the last 18 months that we've been working on this project, almost 2 years now, trying to get this information from the real estate associations so that we could see what the actual listing prices are and the sales prices are for homes in our communities, but we haven't accessed that yet. So currently we just have the census dwelling value that's there, but we also have quite a bit of breakdown here around the associated shelter costs in that community and those that are living in unaffordable housing. So the next tab is the housing supply page, and I think we've got a slide for that here that shows a screenshot of what that looks like. I'm not able to scroll down on this page to show you comprehensively everything that's included here, but the housing supply page essentially is showing all the dwellings in our community, our building permit information, and our community housing information as well. So it gives you a sense of what the housing stock makeup looks like in your community, how many apartments you have, how many single family houses you have, how many duplexes you have. And as well, we are showing the historical permit information, what kinds of houses have been permitted and built in your communities, and which ones are getting applied for, so that if a community is wanting to see more certain types of housing or where they're seeing certain kinds of gaps, they can identify those through these charts. And as well, if a developer or a builder was looking at this, they can see what kinds of units are being permitted and built in your communities and where there might be a niche or an opportunity for them to build other kinds of housing as well. So certainly quite a bit of information on the housing supply page, being that we have all of the permit information there as well. The DSABs have also shared with us information around their, what we refer to as municipal, or in your region, those social administration board units that they own and operate, those affordable housing units. So it would say how many units they have and how many of them are affordable, that 30% or less of our gross income to rent those units. So that information is provided there as well, that they're also naming their housing corporations and how many units their housing corporations have and how many of them are affordable or rent geared to income as well, which could be actually under that 30% threshold. So some context about what's going on with affordable housing in our municipalities as well. It's also showing the core housing need for the municipality. And when we're looking at it at a district view, I can only see the one pie chart that's populating here to provide the overall core housing need for the district. If I was looking at it at a lower tier, 2 more pie charts would populate here to give me a sense of the tenants that are in core need and the owners that are also in core need. So quite a bit of information that's provided on the supply page. So the next couple tabs, I think, are going to be mentioned a little later in the presentation, and it's going to jump right to the community comparison tool. So this shows you what the community comparison tool looks like. It has a selection to be able to choose which municipalities you would like to look at. So you can look at any number of municipalities at the same time on the systems by selecting which ones you're interested in viewing. And I think the next tab shows a populated report that my colleague has generated. So she's selected the District of Thunder Bay, the District of Rainy River, and a number of lower tier municipalities data to be populated as the locations that she's interested in looking at in her report. She's also selected from the data selection tool all the data points that she's interested in viewing to look at each of those districts or municipalities' data points compared against one another. So when you're viewing it in the comparison tool, there's a yellow highlight bar that you can navigate to compare across the sheet, or you can export this information into an Excel document if you want to manipulate that data or move it around, or you can save it as a PDF if you're wanting to include it in a report that you're submitting. And oftentimes our municipalities or other groups that access the information are using it in a proposal or a presentation that they're using this information for. So it gives a good sense to municipalities what's going on in neighboring districts or municipalities when they're submitting proposals to use as comparisons. Or if a builder or developer is looking at this, they can get a good sense of what the economic state of that community is, whether they can afford the type of housing that they're looking to build, what their housing supply looks like and what their needs are, which community would be most appropriate for them to build in as well. So really great thing to be able to use that comparison ability. So some of the pieces that we have that are still in development for Northern Ontario include our zoning tab page. So that's here on the left-hand side that you can see. And for rural Eastern and rural Western Ontario, this page currently looks as we are seeing it as I'm screen sharing it right now. So our GIS departments from our municipalities have shared their geospatial files with us to show where our municipal boundaries are on our municipalities, and then as well where our settlement boundaries are. So in this example, they're color coded to show where our settlement areas are. And ideally, this is so that if a builder was looking at our municipality, that they would be drawn to our settlement areas to develop versus in our farmers' fields, which is quite common in rural Western and Eastern Ontario, that people move out to rural communities to build these huge mini mansions versus focusing in our settlement areas where we want to see that development and build up happening. And so on the zoning map of the Rural Housing Information System, the settlement area is also color coded. So in this case, you can see there's some that are blue, some are yellow, and some are red. And in this instance, we're showing the color coding to show whether it is serviced or not. So whether it has waste and water servicing. And as you can see, this big blue one here has both waste and water services, whereas this settlement area is color coded yellow, which means it only has water servicing. So a developer might be able to determine it would cost them less to build in a blue color coded settlement area because it already has waste and water services. So they wouldn't have to build a septic or a well. And so those are some considerations that might draw them into building into our settlement areas as well, to be able to show our servicing information public facing, which is even in Eastern and Western Ontario isn't quite common for our rural municipalities. And if we were able to zoom in closer on this map, on a settlement area, we would also be able to see the zoning information in that settlement area. And we're showing specifically the zoning that permits those 3 or more type dwellings to be built, those affordable type dense buildings that are being able to be created in that settlement area. So that ideally that a developer or a builder that is looking at this is only looking at our zoning categories that would be building more affordable type units, the kinds of units that we need versus more single family houses. So this page also provides a link to the municipality's building bylaw, and as well a summary about each of those zoning categories that permit 3 or more type units to be built. So we're still in the process of sorting out what this page will look like for our northern municipalities. We have met with the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center and Acorn, and it sounds like Algoma is going to be our first district to share their geospatial map files with us, to feature Algoma as the first pilot district to be added to the Rural Housing Information System. And once we have their geospatial map files, we'll be able to determine how much information we can show on this page. Can we show the settlement areas? Can we show zoning information? Is the servicing layer, that waste and water information, available that we could show it as well? And Acorn has been very gracious with also connecting us with the GIS departments for all the other regions in Northern Ontario as well, to discuss with them about sharing their map files to be featured on the Rural Housing Information System as well. So TBA, more to be announced around this area about what's happening with the zoning map and what that's going to look like for the northern municipalities. So one of the other pages that's featured on the Rural Housing Information System is something called the Housing Development Incentives page. So in rural Eastern and Western Ontario, we've collected this information from our municipal staff to show whether or not they have a municipal incentive to encourage affordable housing development builds in their communities. So some of them have tax exemptions, some of them have waivers, some of them have affordable housing grants. And in this example, you can see in rural Western Ontario that they have a number of grants that they're featuring on this page that are for their municipality. So ideally, we could have a way to collect this from NOMA's municipal members as well. And if staff are interested, we could launch a survey to collect this information if the municipalities have this information at their level. If those grants are administered by your municipalities and are made available for affordable housing project builds. It may sit at the DSABs, it may sit at the provincial level. It's still to be determined where we can collect this information to feature it for that municipal sort of level of grants or exemptions and waivers that might be available for affordable housing builds. It seems to mostly sit with the DSABs or the province at this time, but I need to learn more about that from your municipalities as well. Our team is also working to collect more provincial and federal grants that will also be featured on this page, so that if we don't have municipal grants to show for Northern Ontario, at least we'll know where provincial and federal grant resources are. So as nonprofit builders or other builders want to access and build affordable housing, they know where they can access grants to make that possible. So next steps, we are working towards the completion of the data for all 145 municipalities of Northern Ontario. There are some components that we're still have under development, but we are going to take sort of the base data that we've collected for all of the municipalities into what we refer to as user testing for all of the municipal members, as well as the DSABs and the Northern Policy Institute and the Northern Data Consortium and any other members, be it FedNor or whoever that wants to participate in the user testing. We really strongly encourage all of NOMA's members to participate in the user testing sessions. This will give us a live opportunity for you to log into the Rural Housing Information System and look at your municipality's data on the system to ensure that the data is correct. If there's anything that looks a bit off or needs fixing, before we take it out to other proponents that would be using this information to spur more housing development in our communities. So whether that's nonprofit builders, private builders or developers as well. So we strongly encourage you to participate in the user testing sessions to utilize this data for yourselves, as well as ensuring that the data is as correct as possible before we're taking it out to the private sector to share the information as well. So we're hoping to schedule our user testing sessions in July. So please keep an eye out in your inbox from an invitation from Andrea about how to register for the user testing sessions. We've also added our Rural Ontario Institute's housing website page there that you can view more information about our data system there. And then there's my colleague's information. Unfortunately, she's on vacation today. Jiko has asked me to fill in for her to do this presentation for her. She is our Northern coordinator, and she is based in Sudbury. She's provided her contact information there, and she will be the one that is sharing the information at the user testing session about what the rural housing information looks like for all of your northern municipalities. So that concludes my introduction to the Rural Housing Information System presentation and the expansion to Northern Ontario. I know we've got maybe a few minutes left. If anyone has any questions that they want to ask, you're more than welcome to do that at this time. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to us, and we will be sending you an invitation to participate shortly in the user testing sessions that shall be booked in July.
Awesome. Thank you, Katia. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to think of any questions they might have. You feel free to put it in the chat or just come online. And so I will probably, as we had discussed earlier, I'd probably be sending that invitation out like June 21st, somewhere in that date. And then we'll hope to get something either the first or second week of July set up, if I'm not mistaken there. And we'll send out some reminders early July on that as well. So hope some people are going to be able to join us for that. I also have rambled now for a good 30 seconds, so I'm not sure if anybody has any questions. I'm thinking maybe no, but we will be, this session's recorded, so I'll put it up online, and I'll send the PowerPoint out to everybody so that they're aware of the initiative, and we'll be keeping an eye out for the next sessions.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for letting me have the opportunity to present to you today.
So thanks so much, Katia, and excuse me, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Jordan has joined us. So welcome, Jordan. I'm going to be bringing your slides up, correct, Jordan?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll be doing that. Just give me 1 second here. There, can everybody see it?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So just give me one. Okay, the floor is yours, Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, everyone, for in advance for your time today. I don't know if me being last is Andrea saving the best for last, or if I have the undue opportunity to be holding you guys up from the rest of your day. So I will try to breeze through this. But again, thank you. Looking at the agenda, this is going to be a bit of a change of pace from previous presenters. But I want to first start off by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Fort William First Nations and the treaty signatories of the Robinson Superior Treaty First Nations. So today I'm going to be talking, it's going to be a campaign-esque type conversation. We're going to talk about mobilizing your most powerful weapon, and that is leveraging your constituents to build momentum and achieve local objectives. Next slide, please, Andrea. I'm going to start off with a quote. So this was a quote taken from Pierre Poilievre's May 3rd op-ed in the National Post. And if it doesn't accurately describe where we are now in relation trying to affect government policy, it's certainly where we're headed. And not to mention probably a period of relative austerity. So this quote, while Poilievre was putting corporate Canada on notice, there are significant parallels that can be drawn to any stakeholder of the federal government, and that's including municipalities. Poilievre government has made clear that his future government will not carry water for anyone. Good ideas that show broad coalition of voter support will drive good decisions, or the decisions that stakeholders want to see. Next slide, please, Andrea. The opportunity here is building exactly that, a broad coalition of support. So campaign strategy and tactics should be deployed outside of election cycles to mobilize voters or your campaign supporters. Campaigns are fundamentally about mobilization, and in order to mobilize voters, they also need to be educated. In my humble opinion, municipalities have underutilized one of their greatest competitive advantages, and that's their constituents. So imagine the impact that thousands of emails, calls, or posts to social media would make, or even depending on the community size, even just hundreds can still have a substantial impact. The key is to demonstrate frequency and urgency of your message, of what impact you're looking to drive. And to do this, you need an engaged base of support. Next slide, please. So delivering that impact through allowed minority can create that change. And so nearly all policies have low salience with voters, with a high number of undecided votes in the middle, the mushy middle, we call it, and committed supporters and opponents on the tail ends of the curve. So mobilization puts the tail end of the curve to work to create the change while bringing some undecideds along for the ride. So essentially, through campaigns, we're looking to create the conditions for an engaged supporter base by raising issue salience. And generally speaking, low issue salience creates, breeds ignorance and creates potentially negative inertia towards those objectives that you're looking to achieve. So not everyone clearly is going to support a project or policy initiative, but by targeting likely supporters and consistently presenting them with information they otherwise would not have known or have access to, you're not only going to be able to mobilize traditional segments of support, but you're also going to be able to tackle that mushy middle, those who would otherwise not have an opinion. We all know too well the impact that vocal few can have on stonewalling a much needed local project. NIMBYism's siren call runs deep and can be strong. Next slide, please. So people notice if their trash isn't collected. So constituents are more likely to show higher levels of engagement and awareness on issues they can see firsthand. And this is what drives them to take action. So it's human nature to seek out and associate with things that are familiar to us. And following this logic, people will both engage and display openness to things that are closer to them, that impact their lives, and that they can more easily see, touch, or use. Cue, local government. Results from our omnibus survey that we fielded last summer showed that people are more likely to have higher levels of trust in their local government as compared to other orders of government. People care about whether their trash is picked up on time or at all. They care about if the roads are maintained or whether their kid's school remains open or is on the chopping block. They care about whether there are not enough jobs or not enough people to fill them. We all know municipalities, particularly in this environment, are stretched thin for resources. And while garbage may be uniquely municipal, funding for roads and infrastructure, funding for schools, immigration policies, all cross jurisdictional boundaries. If the idea of these or how exactly other orders of government impact day-to-day lives of Ontarians is hard to conjure an image of or for. Chances are people are going to be less likely, will be less connected to the issue and less likely to feel compelled to take action. Next slide, please, Andrea. So cue Crestview's secret sauce. So we start with research, and we are strategy before tactics. So we don't just jump to tactics. We take the time to fully immerse ourselves in the issues, and this is backed by a cracked research team. We then move to campaign plan development, and so we look to strategic considerations. We identify risk and ways to mitigate that. Key messages that drive both emotional and cognitive responses, branding and creative, and are all carefully planned. We then look to deploy digital ads. So we fish where the fish are, and through careful audience targeting, we recruit through digital ads on platforms where supporters naturally engage. We then use our custom-built proprietary tech, which we refer to as Mobilizer. And through Mobilizer, we're able to segment supporters and put them on customized user journeys. So they'll receive specific calls to action to write, post on social media, make calls, record videos, and a variety of other tactics that that are all directed towards targeted decision makers. And then this leads essentially to that. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Andrea. This then leads to direct government engagement. So targeted decision makers will receive those unique direct engagements from voters. And what's unique about our tech is that we can actually get through spam filters. So our direct campaign supporters we refer to them as authentic citizen voices, and they are actually able to connect with decision makers or elected officials as if they were using their own email, even though that they are coming through the campaign's website or specific calls to action. And then ultimately, this is what drives policy change. So time and again, we're able to move the needle for clients and help them achieve their objectives. Next slide, please, Andrea. So a couple case studies here. So one of our clients, Stollery Children's Hospital, if you're not familiar with this hospital, it's a children's hospital in Northern Alberta, Central Alberta, Edmonton. And so as recently as 2022, we developed a standalone, the Stollery is looking to develop a standalone facility for Edmonton's Stollery Children's Hospital. But was not seen as a priority for capital planning dollars. Our solution supported the Stollery's Hospital Foundation by identifying and mobilizing a core group of Alberta voters, funneling new constituents from awareness to action, and amplifying their voice through social media content and direct communications with government officials. The ultimate outcome was the Stollery Children's Hospital Foundation's campaign, Tomorrow and Today, which was designed by Crestview's, our team here at Crestview, received enthusiastic bipartisan support and roughly $60 million in funding pledges in subsequent budgets for the construction of a new children's hospital. This work is continuing, and we continue to build strong relationships with the governing party in Alberta and continue to demonstrate wins for the Stollery. And last slide here, Andrea, please. Thank you. So another case study I would like to leave you with. This is a white label case study. Just did not want to, due to confidentiality, share the name of the client, but they are known as, we'll come to know them as a major energy project developer. So the problem that they were facing was increased community tensions over a proposed pump storage project. an increased political risk of local municipalities declaring themselves as unwilling hosts. So our solution was to build a plan to develop authentic community engagement, which included listening to feedback to improve design and answer community questions. We helped implement a number of different tactics, some of which included canvassing program with direct outreach with every residence in and around the community. We implemented weekly coffee chats as an opportunity for residents to come in and ask and have their questions answered, and to take their feedback and then feed that back into the process of the design process. We mobilized supporters to email their elected representatives as authentic voices with unique content, including achieving voter support from impacted council. And then we also identified supporters, undecideds, and non-supporters for future mobilization efforts. The ultimate outcome, and this work is still ongoing, but where we are today is we have achieved a vote of conditional support by the local community, and we are working now to expand, to replicate that work from the host community into the regional, the communities in the region as well. So with that, I will conclude probably my presentation in record timing of 9 minutes. Happy to answer any questions, but I hope that I left you with a bit of a teaser in terms of mobilizing supporters should really be at the municipal level, should really be looked at as an untapped potential. And should be leveraged outside of the typical election cycles. Where we are now, both provincially and federally, we are moving into, let's say, a new form of populism, and we will certainly organizations that establish and are able to demonstrate that they have a broad coalition of support will be able to drive and affect the change that they are looking to see at both the provincial and federal level. So in sum, look to your voters as an opportunity to get them to take action outside of, again, those election cycles every 4 years. With that, I'll yield the floor back to Andrea, and if there's any questions.
Thanks so much, Jordan. That was record timing, but worked out great. People will get a little early lunchtime, I guess, since obviously the break wasn't very conducive for lunch. So sorry about that. We did have so many people join us at this learning morning that it kind of overflowed, but I will share your presentation with everybody. And of course, everything will go up on YouTube. Some point this week, and I've been rambling to see if anybody had any questions, but seeing none, well, I guess we'll give people 19 minutes back in their day. So really appreciate you joining us, Jordan, and we'll be in touch as always. So thank you so much. And thank you to everybody and all the presenters for joining us today, and stay tuned for it being up on YouTube, and I'll send the 5 or so presentations sometime this week as well. And we will be having another learning morning, I'm hoping, in the fall. Usually it happens around November, first week of December, so keep a lookout for that. And if you have anybody who is interested in presenting at that learning morning, please tell them to contact me. So thank you everybody for joining us, and have a great rest of the afternoon. Bye.